warm welcome to your session on robbery, Section 8 of the Theft Act 1968, brought to you by Solutions Equinox for Police Learning. My name is Phil Church and I shall be your narrator and guide for this session. Advertise your business or services within our learning videos. Targeted advertising to our learners. Please contact our team for prices at info@solutionsequinox.com. This presentation is brought to you by Solutions Equinox Training Solutions and the SETS channel. So the agenda for this session. After a quick introduction from me, the session will be on robbery, and there will be an explanation at the end as to how you can give feedback on this session. Our company background. Solutions Equinox were founded in 2018 after my co-director Jason Hunt and I left the police earlier in 2018 after 22 years and 15 years police service. These are just some of the companies and partners that Jason and I have had the privilege of working with since then. And these are the police services that we work for. And whilst in the BTP, we will recruit trainers for 5 years, training and teaching newly recruited police officers in law and procedures and training transferees. If you'd like to know more about us, please feel free to visit our company website at solutionsequinox.com. Take a moment to have a think about what your needs and expectations are for this robbery sessions. And at the end, reflect on whether or not your expectations were met. If you would like to know more, please contact us at info@solutionsequinox.com. So the aim of this session is an understanding of robbery, Section 8 of the Theft Act 1968, and the learning outcomes will be to understand why theft is a key component of robbery, and to understand each of the key points to prove of the definition. Robbery, Section 8 of the Theft Act 1968. Robbery is triable on indictment, which means it's a Crown Court only offence. And on conviction, a person can face up to life imprisonment on indictment. It is a recordable offence, and a recordable offence is any offence in England and Wales where the police must keep records of convictions and offenders on the police national computer. A recordable offence should not be confused with a notifiable offence. Robbery is also a notifiable offence, and that is any offence under United Kingdom law where the police must inform the Home Office, who use the report to compile crime statistics. The term notifiable offence is sometimes confused with recordable offence. Robbery, Section 8, Theft Act 1968. The definition. A person commits robbery if he or she steals and immediately before or at the time of doing so and in order to do so uses force on any person or puts or seeks to put any person in fear of being then and there subjected to force. So the definition is a person commits robbery if he or she steals and immediately before or at the time of doing so and in order to do so uses force on any person or puts or seeks to put any person in fear of being then and there subjected to force. Each of these key elements must be present to constitute the offence. Steals. Immediately before. at the time of doing so, and in order to do so, uses force on any person, or puts or seeks to put any person in fear of immediate force. These are known as your points to prove for the offence. A clarification. This offence is sometimes referred to by people as mugging. This offence should not be confused with an assault and theft from person. This is where an assault has taken place and property is subsequently taken from the victim after the assault commenced. That is not a robbery. Locations where this offence can be committed. A robbery can take place anywhere. Homes, apartments, factories, parks, in a car, on a boat, on an airplane, absolutely anywhere. Steals. For the offence of robbery to be complete, there must always be a full offence of theft. So remember, no theft, no robbery. And if you haven't already do so, please watch our Theft Act 1968 Section 1 Subsection 1 video about the Theft Act and its definition. And immediately before. There must be an unbroken chain of events from when force is being used and the actual theft taking place. However, this can mean that force is used several hours prior to the theft taking place. The events, however, must be unbroken. So for example, bank robbers enter a bank and use force on staff to get them to open the safe. However, the safe is on a time delay and opens several hours later, whereupon the robbers complete the theft of cash. The offence is complete because the offenders first used force prior on the cashier in order to complete the theft. An offender approaches another person in the street and pushes them to the ground and then steals their handbag. Force has been used to facilitate the theft. The offence is complete. The offender used force prior on the victim in order to complete the theft. A fight breaks out between two persons in a busy street. One of the persons is beaten to the ground and repeatedly kicked. Once on the ground, the other person sees the victim's mobile telephone and picks this up and leaves the scene with the property. This is not a robbery. The offender used force on the victim in a fight. However, this was not in order to commission a theft. The theft was an afterthought. An offender approaches a stationary car waiting at traffic lights and uses severe force to drag the victim out, causing injuries. The car is then driven away and later abandoned on an industrial estate. This is not a robbery. The offender used force on the victim to take the car. However, this was not in order to commission a theft. The vehicle was later abandoned, so no theft. Remember, permanent deprivation needs to take place. There are several youths in a playground of a school when one of them threatens to beat another up after school unless he hands over all his cash. The victim duly obliges and hands over the cash to the offending youth. This is not a robbery. Although a theft has taken place, there was no force used or threatened prior or at the time. The threat of violence would take place in the future. At the time of doing so. Where force has been used, this was at the time that the actual theft was being perpetrated. So an example of this would be a youth approaches another youth sat on the upper deck of a double-decker bus. The offending youth repeatedly punches the other one whilst grabbing his mobile phone. So in this case, the offence is complete. The offender, intending to steal the mobile phone, used force at the time in question in order to facilitate the theft. And in order to do so. The material point here is that any force or putting in fear must have been used in order to commit an actual theft and not to aid the escape of the offender. So an example, a person approaches another in a busy street and seeing a handbag hung over her shoulder, unhooks this and turns to run off. The victim then grabs hold of the offender's jacket in an attempt to detain him. The offender then repeatedly punches the victim until she lets go and then runs off with the bag. This is not a robbery. Although a theft has taken place and force was used, this is not a robbery. The force was used in order to facilitate an escape and not a theft. A person walks into a corner shop and says to the member of staff, "Hand over all of your cash or I will stab you." Fearing for his safety, the member of staff hands over the contents of the till and the offender runs out of the shop. The offence is complete. The offender intending to steal the cash put or sought to put the member of staff in fear of being then and there subjected to force to facilitate the theft. Using force on any person. The use of force can be on any person. The offender does not have to intend to use force. The fact they used it in order to commit a theft is sufficient. The scale of force can include serious violence to a mere nudge. Force can even include instances where this was applied recklessly. Violently pulling a bag out of someone's grasp is considered force. Accidental use of force is not sufficient for robbery. Robberies are basically an aggravated theft where force is used to facilitate the theft. Or puts, or seeks to put, any person in fear of being then and there subjected to force. As per some of the examples we have already looked at, actual force does not need to be used. The threat of force can be sufficient. Irrespective, it must be in order to facilitate the theft. The offender only needs to intend to put another person in fear. The fact that the other person wasn't frightened is irrelevant. So in this example, the person says, "Hand over the suitcase or I'll stab your boyfriend." And the lady thinks, "I think he's being serious and I'm really fearful for my partner." The threat does not have to be made to the person who has the property. But a person cannot fear for the safety of another person. So remember, all of the points of the offence must be present in order for it to be complete. Each of these key elements must be present to constitute the offence, and they are: steals, immediately before, at the time of doing so, and in order to do so, uses force on any person, or puts or seeks to put any person in fear of immediate force. And these are your points to prove, and the offence will be complete. Thank you for listening. We hope that this bite-sized law presentation was helpful to you, and we'll always be grateful for your feedback. You can either leave us a message on our SETS channel, or you can email us at info@solutionsequinox.com. Advertise your business or services within our learning videos. Targeted advertising to our learners. Please contact our team for prices at info@solutionsequinox.com.